few months ago, I attended a conference in New York City for an organization called independentvoting.org, doing kind of a field trip to get out there and meet some of the people that are making a difference in the world of independent voting, and people are trying to give a voice to that segment of the population. And I was sitting there waiting for the presentation to start, and I started flipping through the book and who the speakers were. And the first name was Joan Blades. So if you don't mind, I'm going to quickly read what I saw when I found Joan Blades' name, because it just was fascinating to me. Joan Blades is co-founder of MoveOn.org and MomsRising.org. She is the co-author of The Custom Fit Workplace, Choose When, Where, and How to Work, and Boost the Bottom Line, and The Motherhood Manifesto. So author of 3 books. Blades is trained as an attorney, which I am too, but we won't hold that against her, and mediator, and was a successful software entrepreneur. She is a founding partner of Living Room Conversations, a program designed to rebuild respectful civil discourse and embrace core shared values. Blades is a leading voice in the transpartisan movement and on the steering committee of Reuniting America. In addition, she is playing a key role in the effort to create a left-right coalition for criminal justice reform. Well, I think you can imagine, as I was reading this, I was immediately thinking, this is someone we've got to have on this program. And I was getting ready for the interview today, and I was trying to figure out how to describe Joan as if that wasn't enough, because we have a segment where we talk about difference makers, you know, the people that have stepped up and made a difference and who are still working to make a difference and break this cycle of dysfunction and polarization, etc. But Joan seemed to me to be a little more than just a difference maker, and I was reaching for the word to use, and the word I hit upon is pioneer. So I looked up in the dictionary pioneer to make sure I was on the right track, and what it says for pioneer is among the first to enter or settle a region, ventures into the unknown or unclaimed territory, helps create or advance new ideas. And I thought, this is a pioneer. This is a woman who isn't just a difference maker, but she's on the forefront of new ideas and is really on the forefront of societal problem solving. And she just doesn't solve one problem. She finds a problem, solves it, and then moves on. So looking forward to a very interesting conversation today with Joan Blades. Joan, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I figured out to call you a pioneer. I've never met you before. I did hear you make a presentation. How do you think of yourself? If you were introducing yourself on my show, how would you do that?
I have called myself an accidental activist on occasion. I'm a deep believer in the power of citizen engagement and the intelligence and goodwill of citizens on the whole. So I believe we need to make it possible for citizens to participate in our democracy in a very rewarding way, and that our democracy will be vastly better when we make as many voices welcome as we can.
Well, I think a lot of people think that, but you actually do it. So there's a big difference to me between the thinking and the doing. When did you find out you were a doer?
I think being a doer just is my nature, and I don't think it's anything that's different. The reality is we were midway in the impeachment scandal, 6 months into it, and everyone was sick to death of the fight when Wes and I wrote a 1-sentence petition and shared it with under 100 friends. Congress must immediately censure the president and move on to pressing issues facing the nation, because we saw the polarization that was happening and that this was not, in fact, serving our country. And you could love Clinton or hate Clinton and agree that we should censure and move on to pressing issues facing our nation. That was extraordinary in '98, having a petition grow to 500,000 people. And at that point, we had a tiger by the tail, and we had to figure out what to do with all these people. And that's when I started learning about grassroots organizing.
Right, so it was started with a simple thought, basically, and that's what the show talks about. We have government's dysfunctional and polarized, let's move on. I love your phrase, let's move on. And you started with a petition, you said literally 100 friends in the Bay Area, so to speak?
No, it was around the country, under 100 friends, honestly.
And was this internet-based? Are you one of the first organizations to be internet-focused?
This was the first really big petition that I'm aware of that gathered in this way.
So you
And we
started
were
with
at the right time and place, and Wes is someone that knows how to design something that's very intuitive. So people were able to agree and write a very simple one sentence if they chose to about why they agreed, and it really expressed the variety of sentiment out there. And you have to remember back then, we had Democrats, Republicans, Independent, Green Party, libertarians saying yes, censure, move on. We had a delivery by Republican Move On members to the GOP headquarters.
So you actually had a physical petition that got delivered?
We printed out petitions and we delivered them physically. We had members go to to House House of Representatives offices and deliver petitions in person. This was an effort to collectively really be heard.
That had to be a stunning moment for you personally to have accomplished something really probably behind your fondest dreams at the time, I would think.
Well, I never imagined getting into politics in any way, shape, or form. So I'd never dreamed about it. And I found it very kind of odd to be in that spot. But when we had hundreds of thousands of people that had never been political in their lives show up in this way, then we felt a real responsibility to help them be as effective as they possibly could be.
So I guess
we did our best.
So I guess at some point you and a group of friends, whatever, had kind of an aha moment and said, wait a minute, we may have something here. We should probably advance this and see if we can keep looking for places to break the cycle of dysfunction, etc. So what were the next steps in terms of trying to come together as an organization?
Well, the reality is that when we started the petition, we thought it was a flash campaign, that we would help all these members, and we didn't call them members, petition signers, communicate with leadership. And then there was an election in November. Generally speaking, the pundits agreed that the impeachment was not popular. And yet 2 weeks later, the House voted to impeach. And that left us with the very uncomfortable feeling that here we'd help hundreds of thousands of people engage for the first time in politics, and then leadership had thrown their noses at them. And good citizens work to elect leaders that represent their values. So we felt at that time that we had a responsibility to stick around until 2000. And we did. We asked our members what they wanted, and they did want to work on the 2000 election. And the plan was to, quit after the 2000 election. But you may recall that was the very odd election with Gore getting the popular vote and odd things happening in Florida, where the Bush presidency happened. And our members essentially said, you're not going anywhere. And it was only at that point that we started intentionally building an organization.
So it was really kind of still ad hoc up until 2000, so to speak?
Yeah, it was mostly volunteer, just getting things done and doing the basics to help our members contribute to candidates that they thought would be good in office. And we raised over $2 million in small contributions in 2000. I remember going to the Kennedy School where we'd been invited to talk and talking about how it was conceivable that, in fact, candidates could run for office and not be beholden to large corporations, special interests, and the wealthy. They could get funding from average citizens. That was very exciting at that time. And that truly was a transformative aspect of Move On as well. It's amazing how much collectively we have been able to step into spaces and support good candidates. It's disturbing how, big money has found ever more ways to counter that citizen engagement. It's a challenge.
So there was a bit of disconnect, I guess, for me when I was doing my research for this program. I had not realized that MoveOn.org had so early in its organizational life become a fundraising organization. I thought that was more of a later step, but you're saying that was pretty early on.
That was basically the second big thing we did. And it wasn't that we were a fundraising organization, because political types tend to think of the money first. And I think of the people first, and I shouldn't say political types. A certain group of folks in the political realm think about the fundraising first, but I think it's about the citizens showing up. And part of them showing up is support for the leaders that they are excited about. So we help people connect and volunteer in campaigns as well, and did all sorts of get out the vote work. We also helped raise money for the candidates that our members wanted to support. And we helped raise it online in small contributions. And that was a starting point for major online fundraising.
So then when you get to 2000, and now again you've kind of term limited yourself, but you've decided to move on. How did you get to this organizational level? How did the organization come together? And again, I'm trying to help my viewers understand that if they want to do something like this, what are some of the things they need to think about in creating an organization like this?
Well, we needed to find an executive director and staff. And there are wonderful, talented people out there that started working with us more. And the good thing about having a very large base to start with, when they gave a small amount of money, it was enough to hire some people. That, I think, is the hardest thing about a startup, is having the funds to pay people to, make it run, because it does take some people. We were always very efficient and small, but even that is hard, and gets harder still with the online piece, honestly.
At some point in there, had this become a full-time avocation for you, or were you still juggling a bunch of other parts of your life?
Yes, it did become a full-time job. And I was, our software company is something we had sold a couple years prior, so I feel very privileged to be able to do this work.
So how long did you remain active at a full-time level with MoveOn.org? Because I know somewhere in there you start sneaking in books and a lot of other fun things.
Around 2004, I started becoming very engaged with the Moms Rising piece, because I got sent a manuscript by Kristen Rao Finkbeiner called The F Word, Feminism in Jeopardy. And I went, yeah, why is feminism in jeopardy? This makes no sense to me. Feminism was great for me. When I was a kid, what I saw women's options as being a nurse, being a teacher, being a secretary, and that did not look very exciting. And by the time I was going to college, there was this vast number of possibilities. What a relief. Feminism did great things for me. And yet it's, why has it acquired a bad name in some ways? So I did read that book, and I got to the part in the book where it talked about how it's not that there's a huge bias against women in the workforce, there's actually a huge bias against mothers. And, they're going to be making about 73 cents to the equally qualified man's dollar. And if you're a single mom, you're going to make about 60 cents to the equally qualified man's dollar. There's a huge bias against, not just the wages, but also hiring and advancement. So I read about this bias, and I went, oh, okay, this I understand, because I had grown a business. And I saw what the obstacles were for mothers, and that it was, in fact, a whole system that caused it to be harder for mothers to succeed in the workplace. And it doesn't need to be like that. I wrote a 2-page just kind of thinking piece I called the Motherhood Manifesto. Shared it with a couple of people. One of them was Ariana Huffington, and was at a event post 2004 election where we were talking about what happened and what, where we go from here. And she said, "Oh, Joan, tell them about the Motherhood Manifesto." I said, "No, not ready to do that. Just thinking about this." I ended up telling this group about how there's a systemic problem in the way we handle families in this country, and it's ending up in this huge bias against mothers in the workplace. Out of all the countries in the world, most people don't know that there's only 3 that have no paid leave for new mothers, and that's Papua New Guinea, Swaziland, and the United States of America. This means that mothers in this country are literally going to work because they're making the choice between feeding their family or taking care of a newborn. And that's crazy. But then you've got workplaces that still think the ideal worker is present that has no responsibilities at home. You have healthcare considerations. We have problems with childcare in this country. It's often underfunded. It's often unavailable. It's not as high quality as it should be. And then we have rigidity in the workplace that's completely unnecessary. So the Motherhood Manifesto puts the systems problem on the table. And by the time I had said a little bit about the Motherhood Manifesto, I had some rather powerful people saying to me, "Well, what you going to do about it?" And I thought about that for a little while and decided, maybe I could write a book. And the first person I thought of was Kristen. And so I called up Kristen and proposed co-authoring the Motherhood Manifesto. And I am, can't believe my good luck that she said yes. Because Kristen is not only a fabulous writer, it turns out she's an amazing organizer, an amazing spokesperson, and has become just this stellar leader in the women's movement. And the women's movement really has to include mothers in a big way, since 80% of us become mothers. And it's good for the world.
So you've written this beautiful book. Somehow it then has to turn into mothersrising.org. So how do you make that leap?
Well, I naively thought at the time I started writing the book with Kristen, we both thought, oh, we'll write this book and then we'll give it to an organization that's working on these issues, and we all go home and we're fine. But the reality was, with my background in Move On, I had a certain idea about how one would organize around these issues. And we ended up starting Moms Rising because we just had this vision for how it could most effectively be done. And the Motherhood Manifesto was a cornerstone that allowed us to leap off from there on Mother's Day 2006. So by Mother's Day 2006, I had some serious alternative work I was doing with Kristen and this growing group of amazing women that have become Moms Rising.
How does, and we're going to get to the close of this segment, so let me just throw one more question at you here. How do you see Moms Rising in the context of, and MoveOn.org, solving the dysfunction and polarization? Do you see that a tie there, or am I taking that too far?
Well, one of the things that attracted me to the motherhood issue is it's a unifying theme. Nope. I shouldn't say nobody. Most people don't hate mothers. There's not a huge bias against them because we want them to fail. It's because of pieces of our systemic safety net and other aspects of work design that have caused us to make it very hard for mothers to succeed. And once we start thinking about it, there are really great opportunities to change that dynamic. And that exciting thing is I've seen some really big change happen. And when it comes to the work issue, I can hang out with conservatives very happily and talk about how to make work more productive by having it be good for all workers. And that's exciting because I'm a mediator by training and inclination, and finding the common ground is where I'm most attracted. And to help people work together, because I believe collaborative problem solving is essential to making the best possible solutions. You know, you want the best ideas from everybody coming to the table. And when we work together in a way that where we care about each other, our outcomes are just dramatically better.
Well, I think that's a great answer, and I think it's also a great segue. We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back and talk about your new pioneering effort, Living Room Conversations.